Okay, so this is Dr. Ethan Birney of Spartanburg Methodist College. He's a history professor here, and thank you for coming over today.
No problem.
So, one of my questions for you is, what are some instances you have seen students on the spectrum like having difficulties adjusting to college education?
Well, I don't always obviously know if a student doesn't disclose to me what's going on, so I can't necessarily jump to conclusions. But I think one of the big challenges is in class trying to make sure that you ask questions at an appropriate time in an appropriate way. I think that can be challenging for a lot of students, but particularly some of the students I've talked to who have been on the spectrum, that's been a challenge for them.
So, how do you think having autism affects education and social life?
From what I've seen, it feels like it can be a challenge because I think when we're teaching classes, we have a lot of just social norms that perhaps we don't even express. We just practice them, and we don't say it. We just do it. We're like, oh, this is how we do this. This is what we do when you come to class. This is how you talk about things in class. This is how we interact with other people. And from my experience talking to people who've been on the spectrum, including family members, it can be very hard to always know what the proper social cues are to follow. So probably like any other circumstance in life, because we have unwritten and unspoken assumptions about how people should interact, that's a challenge for students. I don't know as much about social life out with class, but I guess can extrapolate that if a student finds it challenging to relate with his or her fellow students in class, that could also translate to having out-of-class difficulties.
That's a good answer. So, a third question I have is, how does it feel working with people on the spectrum? Like, how did you feel working with somebody on the spectrum the first time?
I think, as far as me, as a professor, I don't honestly know that it was something I had strong feelings about. One thing that happens as you teach a lot, you learn that not every student is absolutely unique, but every student is unique. Like, there are patterns of behavior. And I don't think that I would say that I've ever worked with a student who has identified as being on the spectrum, who has been, that it's been a challenge or a problem. I feel like the only time that I've been challenged or found a teaching situation problematic is if a student is belligerent or completely disengaged. And the students I've taught who have identified as being on the spectrum have not been either belligerent or disengaged. It more tends to be trying to say, I see where your interests are and why you want to talk about this, but let's try to direct your comments and your engagement into more traditionally practiced pathways.
I like that. That's actually a good answer.
Thank you.
So, my fourth question is, out of your entire career teaching at Spartanburg Methodist College, what are some ideas that you can give to help Spartanburg Methodist College spread awareness for people on the spectrum?
Well, I think I've worked a decent bit with Gina Paris, and I have found it very helpful to go and chat with her and ask for questions. So I think making sure that all of us who are teaching here are aware of what a wonderful resource we have in talking to Gina. That's definitely a good move. I think also, as professors, one of our jobs when we're planning our classes is to set up learning outcomes and learning objectives and to try to figure out what students need to accomplish in order to be successful. And every student is going to learn in a slightly different way. And so I think it helps when a professor, like me or anyone else, is interacting with a student who has a slightly different learning style or interaction style to before reacting and coming up with a plan like, oh, how do I want this behavior to be changed, to think, well, wait a sec, let me go back to my learning objectives and my learning outcomes, and how am I going to help this student reach that place at the same time as being a productive member of the class. I don't know if that fully answers the question.
It answers a good deal. And my final question is, how do you feel about helping other students on the spectrum going forward into the future?
Oh, I'm very happy to help any student. So, like I said, I've never had a student who's identified as being on the spectrum. I obviously don't know who has been disinterested in class. And I think as long as a student is interested in class, either because they enjoy the subject matter or because they want to get a good grade, either one of those means that the student wants to do well in the class, and I can work with them. And then if I had a student, this is hypothetical of course, if I had a student who identified as being on the spectrum, but also expressed a deep lack of caring about history and the class, then I would work with them just like I work with any other student, and I would try to say, well, I know that this class doesn't seem particularly interesting to you. Here are some reasons why you might find this class to be interesting, as well as, of course, you want to keep up a good GPA. So I'm more than happy to work with any student who's interested. Or, quite frankly, any student who's not. If they're in my class, then we'll figure out a way forward.
Okay. Well, that's all my questions I have for you. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, very nice.